Hi, and welcome to the next section in the evaluation chapter, which is a quite simple section on the training error. So here we'll understand how the training error is defined. So that's really easy to state. So we're simply evaluating on the same data set that we have used for fitting our machine learning model. And then we'll figure out through various examples why this is a really bad idea, especially for nonlinear and non-parametric models. And we usually should never do this in a, let's say, general machine learning evaluation workflow. Okay, so let's start by defining the training error. This is not really a joke, so this is our first potential statistical estimator for estimating the generalization error through a splitting procedure. So we basically don't split up our data set at all. So we'll just take our data set as it is completely, 100% for training, fit our model on it, and then we plug in exactly the same data sets that we used for training the model, predict on it, evaluate our predictions through our loss function, or rather through our performance metric rho, and we obtain our training error. And this estimator is also used for, I think, pretty obvious reasons, the apparent error, or the apparent error rate, or the resubstitution error. I guess that's also pretty clear in terms of terminology. And as I've said before, this is it's technically possible to use this as an estimator for generalization performance in ML, but in general, this is really a bad idea. So let's take a look at the first example. So here we are training a KNN model, and we'll show that for some large data sets and for some model classes, maybe, the law of large numbers might play in our favor, and the training error can actually yield a good approximation of the generalization error. So this is just to show that this can potentially work. Problem is, in general, we will really have no guarantees that the example like here will generalize to other situations, and especially for models of less constrained complexity and for smaller data sets, everything will not work out as nicely as here. But be it as it may, what we're doing here is we are now sampling up to 30k points from the spirals data set. We've seen that before as the toy example data set for evaluation. It's shown here on the right hand side in 2D. It just consists of these two features, x1 and x2. We'll fit a k-nearest neighbor model to that data set, and we'll use a very large data set for testing. So I think approximately 100,000 fresh unused points, unused during the fitting process, to kind of measure our true generalization error. We'll now use 100 points, 1,000 points, 10,000 points, up to 30k points for training. And here in this graph below, we'll measure the difference between the true generalization error and the training error. And you can see that this gap closes to nearly zero at the end. So in this case, we could have actually used the training error for estimation of the GE. But as I've said before, this will not always work. So here's just a slight variation of the same example. Now we'll fix our training data size to exactly 500 points, and we're going to vary k now as a model selection hyperparameter. And for all of these different settings for the number of neighbors in the KNN, we'll again measure the training error. We'll measure the training error on the training set, so on these 500 points, and we'll again measure the testing error on this large, fresh, extra testing data set. And you can see here that there's a certain range of settings for k where this works quite well, where this gap here, this difference between the train and the test error is quite small. But especially for low settings of k, so beginning from, let's say here, so from 5 to k equals 1, this low training error is quite deceptive. There's quite a large gap, up to more than 10% difference between both estimators. And just for extra visualization purposes, I've picked one of these models here with k equals 2. I've plotted the 500 data points, so the inside of these little circles here. That's the true class label, the background color. That's the prediction by our KNN model. And you can also see here the evaluated training error, which is for this sample 8%, but the testing error is nearly twice as high. And I've also visualized here through these, black dots or black smudges. These are extra points sampled from the spirals distribution where our KNN model actually misclassifies. Yeah? So where these 14% are actually located. Yeah? You can also see a few of these training errors. So these would be circles like maybe this here and this guy here, where the inner color is different to the background color of the prediction by our KNN model. Now, second example, polynomial regression. So this is also quite nice to show where how evaluation through the training error can go wrong in model selection. So we sample data from a very, very simple univariate sinusoidal function here with a little Gaussian error on top of it. And we'll use d-degree polynomial regression model. So in the class of linear regression models, we'll fit that to a very small data set here. And this dotted line here is the unknown true underlying function that we are trying to figure out through our regression approach. And we'll want to see how close we can get to that true function. And of course, now the obvious and quite simple model selection question is which d should we actually use? So which degree of the polynomial should we select to obtain a reasonable fit to our data set at hand. Now, we can do two things here, and this is why I've actually constructed this very simple example. So the first thing we can do is we can actually do a visual inspection of our model compared to our cloud of data points. In this case, we can do more, right? We can't on top of visualizing very nicely in 1D how our data points are located. So just by eyeballing, we can kind of figure out where the true function is probably located. We also, for this simulated example, we know where the true function lies. And we can now visually compare different settings for D and different resulting models, model functions, model landscapes in comparison to how closely they match this dotted true function here. And we can easily see that if we set D to 1, well, we'll get a linear model, right? And this is clearly underfitting. This has nothing to do with the underlying true structure of our true function f. And we can also easily see that for D equals 9, we have a strongly overfitting model here, which basically starts to interpolate the noise of our sampled data points. So we're basically starting to interpolate this guy here as well, what we really don't want to do. Now, in between, we have the setting here for D equals 3. So that's this guy here. And you can see that this guy really, really quite nicely now regresses through our true mean function f, and that this is actually pretty close to what we want. Now, unfortunately, we will not be able to do this in a realistic application when we fit machine learning models to high dimensional data, right? We will not be able to plot it like this. So we need a quantitative tool in order to guide us through this model selection problem. Should hopefully be our evaluation workflow, right? Now, obviously for training error estimation, this does not work. So we'll see we can see the three MSEs here, and MSE is nearly 0, or at the very least best of the 3 for the model D equals 9 with highest complexity. So our training error procedure now, if we would employ that for model selection, is not only wrong in terms of the estimated error. So if this would work perfectly, let me backtrack from that. It's at least very wrong in terms of selecting the appropriate model. So it actually chooses here the most overfitting model of maximal complexity. I also wanted to say that this is wrong in estimating the error here, which I would probably know for the epsilon because I know the standard deviation of the Gaussian. But I would only want to estimate that in terms of a numeric value if my model would be would also exactly match the sinusoidal function, which I can't expect from my polynomial regression here. So this would always be larger, and I don't know exactly how much larger it would be. So let's forget about this here. Anyway, this was the point that I wanted to make. We can't use this for model selection, and we are also still seriously underestimating, in an overly optimistic way, how well our model is going to behave on new data from the same distribution. We can actually create situations where this problem is driven to its absolute extreme. So, for example, for 1 and n models, so for a k and n model with k equals 1, the training error will always be exactly 0, as long as we don't have repeated measurements, so xi's, which are located on exactly the same position. If the training examples are all different in terms of their x values, each xi will be its own nearest neighbor during test time if you use the training error. So for such a model, the training error will always be exactly 0 for basically any reasonable loss function. We can also use this as a, artificial trick to extend any ML training procedure in kind of a cheating manner to drive its training error also to exactly 0. So after normal fitting, we simply extend the training procedure by also storing the training data, and during prediction time, the first thing we do is, if we are seeing a certain example, we check in our database whether we have already stored that example. If we have stored that in our database, we simply replicate its label. If we would evaluate such a procedure again through the training error, this would also produce an estimate of exactly 0. So in a certain sense, we are kind of adding in the 1 and n procedure as kind of an extra little post hoc step here at the end during prediction time. You might have also heard that there are interpolating regression models. So for example, interpolating splines, which directly go through every training data point. So for all models of this interpolating type as regression models, they would also produce a training error of exactly 0. This is also what I meant before when I said my model is beginning to interpolate, this is nearly already interpolating the noise. And this is, like I said, this is what we really usually don't want in a machine learning context, where we can assume that there will always be some form of measurement error, and we don't want to start learning this by heart with our regression model. Last slide for this section. So I want to mention that there are many different goodness of fit measures, as they're usually called in classical statistics, like the classical definition of the R-squared, likelihood, the AIC, the BIC, and so on, and all of these measures. They are all, at least in their basic form, based on the training error, and they're measured on the training set. And of course, this is not complete nonsense in classical statistics, but these measures can only be used for models of quite restricted capacity if you have enough data. If you are not violating certain distributional assumptions, then such an evaluation might be okay and might work, but you have a lot of things to check. And this is why I would say that for these classical approaches, one of the most important things is actually model diagnosis, checking whether all of these various assumptions hold. So you can then use these metrics as they are defined, and you can trust the inference on your model. But it's very, very hard to figure out when that actually breaks. And if you're beginning to mix non-parametric modeling with classical statistical modeling, or even use classical statistical modeling on more complex data, on more high-dimensional, in higher dimensional settings, and this can start happening even if you are just using a linear model on a higher dimensional data situation, you can start to overfit even with your linear models, and then all of these estimators will not produce a true picture in terms of what will happen if you evaluate the model on new test data. Another question is, if you're beginning to mix up your model classes, how are you going to fairly compare such a classical model then through such a metric to a more non-parametric, non-linear machine learning type model? So also for these classical situations, or I would say probably in any scenario where you would use any type of predicting model, any type of predictive modeling, out of sample testing is probably always a good idea. Even if you trust in this, why not do out of sample testing additionally and compare to it, and see whether you can get a bit smarter by doing that.